Be weird though, because I'll be sharing. I'm only on my laptop, so if I'm going to share my screen at all, it's going to be. I'm going to have to figure out how to navigate all that. I might rely upon you a little bit more heavily than I normally do, Brian, to keep things going forward today.
Yeah, hopefully things will just move nice and smooth.
Nice. All
Uh,
right. Is it Fran or Fran, by the way?
Whatever. Like I get.
All right. So, Fran, I know that you've watched some of the recordings, maybe, but this is the first
That's
one you've
right.
actually joined live.
That's correct. Yeah.
Cool. So I tend to start with, and I know Z, by the way, Zia is my, Brian, in the last meeting I mentioned I have a new
oh
intern.
yeah.
Zia is my intern. So,
Oh, thanks for
um,
joining, Zia.
Oh, thanks for the invitation. Sorry to learn more about smart connection.
Awesome.
let's see. I'm going to share my screen here. What is today, the 15th? Cool. Um, Evan's joining. Hey, Evan.
Hey.
You're on mute, but
Yeah.
we're concluding that you're saying something.
Yes, sorry. I'm finishing up lunch here. I'll be done soon. I'll be back in front of my computer. But
Sounds good.
good to see you guys.
Good to see you. All
And
right.
is can you guys hear like ambient noise or am I good?
No, you sound fine.
Cool.
Awesome. Yeah, and in case you guys don't know, if you're familiar with the Smart Visualizer plugin, so basically it's like it takes smart connections and shows you that graph view. That was Evan's doing.
Oh, okay.
Nice.
Like
Yep.
the one that utilizes the canvas.
Yes.
Um
Well,
yeah,
I
like
mean, yeah.
it's the graph view that's similar to like Obsidian's graph view. But it uses, instead of links between notes, it uses smart connections to make the connections.
Right. But it's like yeah. I saw it. It's kind of a clever way to kind of manipulate in case that you want to delete some messages and start a workflow midway, right? For example, I mean that's one of the uses that I have.
So
I mean, you
really,
can. Go
I
ahead,
see a
Brian.
lot of opportunity with the smart visualizer. So like there's stuff that I'm working on that's more back end stuff that I'm really excited about, like getting that finished up so that Evan can put the visualization component, for example, like clustering. So like right now the smart visualizer is essentially limited to the current note, sort of like, smart connections shows you relative to your current note. But, in the hopefully near future, we'll be able to change that into like a full vault, like the entire vault like view of a graph, using clusters, and
Hmm.
maybe like in addition to clusters, like showing like folders as the central node. And I think that that's going to be really cool for finding ways to better organize your vault, or maybe like selecting things that are similar, like for use as context. Like I think there's a lot of opportunity there.
Right. I mean, that's the plan. We have the base right now, but eventually, like, we envision just like being able to manipulate any of your nodes or anything like that just through the visualization, where you can click on different nodes and be like, all right, combine these or create an idea out of these nodes that I've selected. Things like that, where it'll be way easier than just having a list or anything like that. So like that's the plan. Is like eventually you'll because like right because honestly visualizations like is the future, like in terms of like how to communicate and how to understand and how to manipulate data is through visualizations. If you just do
Hmm.
text, that is something that's cool and it works, but it's very limited with what you can do and what you can perceive or what's happening. So with this visualization feature, like that's what we're hoping will kind of bridge the gap between human experience and like our notes, because the thing is like with text and audio and everything, I'm sorry, I'm going to finish it real quick, is that we live in a three-dimensional world and we're communicating with audio and text, which only like describes a three-dimensional world. But if you had like 2D like visualizations and everything like that, that's way more descriptive than just using text and audio. You should have like a way better way of interacting with your thoughts, manipulating them or updating things. So that's the plan for the future of smart connections. And I literally just moved this week, which is why I've also been kind of delayed on updating things. But I plan to go full in with Brian. We've been talking about even doing some like streaming of coding sessions for smart connections,
I would
things
love
like
to
that.
participate on that. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, no, yeah, we'll invite you. But like we talked about, yeah, just like streaming our coding sessions as we're developing new features or as we're changing things. Like we'll have the chat open, and if anyone wants to talk, we'll talk with them as we're updating things. But that
Yeah.
is the plan for the near future because I literally just moved. I'm getting my studio set up, and we'll be doing that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that one.
Cool. All right.
Thanks for
So I know we
joining,
got a,
Jason.
yeah, thanks for joining, Jason. And we got a nice little quorum here. So I'm gonna go ahead and start sharing the screen again. We'll hop into our usual rhythm of lean coffee style meetings. And I apologize, I am just on my laptop because I'm feeling under the weather, so I'm not with my multiple desktop things. So right out of the gate, as I share my screen, we're gonna have the infinity mirror effect. And then
And
we're
real
gonna
quick,
hop
I'm
to the
heading
Miro
back.
board.
I'm heading back to my computer real quick because I'm at this
Cool.
restaurant, but I'm like 2 blocks away. I'm just gonna head there and I'll be on my computer. So just
Yeah.
FYI, I'll be right back.
Sounds good.
Okay. And Jason, there should be a link. Is the link in the chat for the Miro board? Did somebody already put it in there, or should I'll drop it in if it?
I can send it. I got it right now.
Okay.
So here's the link to the Miro board. Oh, you have a better link than I do, Ryan, or at least it's
Oh
shorter.
yeah. I just
All right.
copied from the browser. I don't know.
That's probably smart to do. All right. So I always do this little preamble in case people aren't familiar with the concept of a lean coffee. But a lean coffee is just a structured way to have a relatively unstructured time together. Lean coffee is essentially, we're going to use sticky notes here to capture and prioritize topics. It's probably not going to take 8 minutes. We'll probably do that at 5. You essentially take your, we all hop in, grab a sticky, put a topic that we might discuss, and then we'll put them over here. And then from there, I'll use the voting features of Miro to be able to have us all vote. We'll put everybody will get 3 votes, and then we'll stack rank the topics we want to talk about. And then for the rest of the time, what we do is we essentially go top down through the prioritization list, and sort of try to time box the topics. So we don't. This community doesn't particularly like have a hard and fast rule around that. But what that does is it gives us a way to have like enough coverage of different types of topics that people are interested in, without having like too much overhead and structure on how the meeting runs. And as I mentioned before, we do have a friendly bot that's joined to record what we chat about. One of the reasons we use that bot, I actually use the tool Grain to do that. What it does is it actually gives us a spit out of already clipped, AI driven topics that people can go back and look at later, that I will post in the fun little green box on the right. So any questions about that before we hop in? Sweet. Starting the timer for 5 minutes. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'm actually probably going to stop sharing my video too, so that I can get a little bit of bite to eat. But yeah, 5 minutes here. Just grab a sticky, add a topic, and then you can either leave it there and I'll drag it over, or you can drag it over there. So.
Okay. Great. Thanks, Matthew.
Mhm.
Oh, I like to see that you brought your coffee, Jason. Perfect.
Well, it's a little later in the UK, so it's a tea, but yeah.
Oh, okay.
But I don't think lean tea sounds as good as the lean coffee.
Not quite as good. What do you got, Fran?
Honestly, my roommate kind of just got me a bit of vodka and cola.
Oh yeah, so I mean, lean vodka or lean cola, that's a little something.
Yeah, that's not that lean, I'd say.
Definitely put some pep in your step.
We could have like a holiday party or something, and that can, we
True.
can all
It could
have
be a
lean
lean
something else.
vodka, lean whatever.
Lean eggnog.
Lean eggnog.
Oh, I don't know about all that. Lean eggnog. All right. Looks like we have a good bit of topics here. I don't see other people adding it. So are we good with maybe moving forward here and prioritizing? Does that sound good, everybody? Cool.
Okay.
All right. I'll share my screen again. Mhm. And let me get the voting squared away. So you should see, I'm going to stop this. When I start this voting, you should see just the sticky notes, voting, don't need these. Oh man, it's a silly interface. All right, since there's 6 topics, I'm just going to do 2 votes apiece. So pick 2 things of these 6 topics you want to do. You'll see like a little prompt where you see join voting. So go ahead and join voting, and you just select the 2 that you would be interested in us talk about. If for whatever reason you haven't been able to join the Miro board, you can always just put your votes in the chat, and I'll go ahead and make sure we factor those in. I'm going to stop sharing so that I don't overtly influence the votes. Us Americans, we always have voting and all that stuff totally squared away, so I'm doing it straight shooting.
Surely no election talk on this call.
Please, dear Lord, no. I'm actually living with my in-laws right now, so there's 3 generations in this house. We're buying this house from them, and so it's a temporary period of time. And needless to say, I'm very glad the election is over.
Oh man. Yeah, that's in-laws are the best when it comes to political conversations.
Oh yeah, it's great. All right.
I think I was the last holdout on the voting. Are we?
Yeah, I think we're done here. I'll share my screen again. We'll take a look at the results. Okay.
Cool.
We got desired workflows. So this would be a pretty good thing here. So let's do this one. Just doing this and then this. Then we'll move these guys over here. We might get to those if we have time, but there was a front and center winner here. So let's start with the desired workflows. Who put this topic? If you want to do like a little intro to kick
Yep.
off the conversation, and then we'll go
So
from there.
that one was me, and like my intention is really just to learn from you guys, like what are the workflows that you imagine are possible that you're not quite able to do yet. And I'm seeing this other note down here. I think I'm just going to pull this one over here if that's okay, because I think this starts to fall in to the desired workflows thing. So if I'm correct, whoever put the key use cases in exploration, research, and synthesis, wants to start out like what their desired workflow might look like, and then give the rest of people some time to think about the workflows. So I'm going to leave it there. If anybody wants to chime in.
Yeah, so I put the key workflows. I'm Jason, tech entrepreneur in the UK. Built digital banks, Monzo and Starling, 2 of the unicorns here. Head of product, led a lot of stuff there. Built banks around the world. So I come from a kind of tech background. But I'm also writing a book, so using Obsidian, and it was less my workflow than, I guess, trying to look at the major workflows in that kind of finding knowledge or being exposed to knowledge, exploring that. Then obviously there's a consumption of it and a collection into some kind of inbox. There's an organization of that, there's a synthesis of that, then there's certain things that come out of that, whether they're articles or essays or books or artifacts, and I guess publication of that afterwards. But I know that that's only one use of Obsidian, and that people use it for a variety of things, everything from running Dungeons and Dragons games to personal management. So I didn't want to get too much into if my specific use case, but try to enlarge it, I guess, to a large enough set of major areas that include most people. So I guess I'll leave it there.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm trying to think if I have a good follow-up question. Anybody else want to chime in?
I just want to make sure that because I love this topic. And by the way, if folks have watched this, depending upon the topic and my understanding of the topic, I sometimes will on screen just take some notes so that people can pick off of something concrete. So one of the reasons I'm also interested in this topic is I've always viewed Obsidian as there's like this, and I'll sort of there's the intake, collection, synthesis of stuff, like the organization. I think this also gets into like sort of knowledge management strategies and things like that. And then like this sort of green thing is where I've always seen, like this green space is where I've always seen like this wonderful beauty in the Obsidian community around, like when I think of workflow, it's like this is the sweet spot of where there's so much opportunity to either do smart connections or to like apply smart connections to our own usage of Obsidian. And then sometimes there's like the known like concrete outputs like books or reports or whatever. But like when I was hearing Jason sort of describe that, it's like this middle area is where I'd love to pull more threads with this crew. I don't know if that resonated with anybody, but that's sort of where my head's at.
Yeah, I think that like just from my perspective and like what I've been building, like I imagine like outcomes could almost be sort of templated, and like so like something I've been thinking a lot about is like, imagine we had a template that had maybe really any amount, but like let's just say a half of a dozen prompts inside of a template, and then the AI sort of goes through a process of iteration, from retrieval to outputting based on those prompts, and then the refeeding the progress back in to the next iteration. And like a word that I think is starting to get a little popular like around this like idea is generating reports. So like right now it's like very much question answer, but if you can come up with like a report on what it is that you want, that already takes it like a quite a bit farther than just the typical question answer format. And then I imagine from there you can start building in ways for the AI to actually make action or like complete actions based on that report.
Yeah, I mean, from my, I guess, personal workflow, Smart Connect and your series of tools is interesting in almost all of those areas, because when it comes to finding new books or new things or new articles to read that might fit within a particular theme, I can jump into ChatGPT and away I go. And when I start to collect those things, I can actually ask about my existing notes and what that might connect into. And then the sort of synthesis around something will grab me, and then I tend to use sort of text expander or something that actually almost have a dialogue with the AI around some of these themes before thinking, well, this essay or this chapter is really about this, and then, well, how could I break that down? How could I structure it? And then I'm using, you know, more generic ChatGPT to sort of get into that. But obviously with the embeddings and being able to find particular articles, you know, away we go. So I agree with that. And I also, I'm reminded of, is it Fabric, you know, the command line tool that actually has a series of templated prompts from extract wisdom from this, pull out the key ideas, what are the quotes? And so it's a little similar to your templating idea, but with community sourced quite significant templates that are on GitHub. So you can actually, you know, pull out that text from GitHub that of all of the various prompts that people have used.
Yeah, I just made a note under the action item section because I'm not familiar with Fabric, so I'm going to make sure I check that out.
Can you
Yeah.
say in few words again what is Fabric very quickly?
Well, we're gonna go explore it. Let's just take a look at it.
Oh, yeah.
So it was a tool by a guy who realized that he liked to do this. It'll be Fabric. That's probably the one.
This thing.
Yeah. So it's basically command line where you could throw a YouTube transcript in and then ask it specifically to extract the wisdom from it. And you essentially use some small commands where he wanted to bring together different open source prompts in order to use on this. So if you go up to the patterns directory in the file list, and so you can see the list. If you go down to extract wisdom, because I quite like that one in the main, anyway. Keep going. Extract wisdom. So the idea, you can click on the system MD. So you see, basically, this is his prompt that it then automatically gets fed in, and so he's put them on GitHub so people can actually submit new ones, and they can be used directly. So rather than embedding it into the tool, it actually pulls a file from GitHub to use, and so you can see what it does. It's actually quite a nice prompt. It gives 15 of these things, 10 of these things, and away you go.
This is fascinating.
That's great.
One of the things that would be wonderful, right, for several reasons, also on the quick, how does Obsidian call it now? Quick, I forgot, but pretty much I would love to have something similar to Fabric, but that look into what I already have on my Obsidian and kind of only add what's new or.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so this, like, having that open source like prompt library, I think like a prompt library's been brought up on these lean coffees in the past, and so I think it'd be great if I could find a way to integrate with that Fabric project, so maybe you could easily pull these things in. A lot of like what I do, like I'm trying to like enable contributions, like we're still really early, in like what I like the vision of the whole project. So, like I really haven't been focused on trying to, pull in contributions as much because, as you guys all probably know, things are changing and breaking so fast. I'd hate to be soliciting contributors and then just breaking their stuff all the time. But like one of those vectors for contributions is definitely prompts. So like while there are some prompts that are like built into the tools, that's really not my intention. Like my intention is to have all of those prompts customizable, even if there is like a default, like built in, like basically anywhere there is a prompt, I don't see why there shouldn't be a way for somebody to go in and edit that prompt.
Yep.
Well, if you want to, for instance, create a map of content or something around a particular folder, maybe it's not integrated into Fabric, but just creating a place on GitHub where we can put prompts about the kinds of different activity that you would undertake in a vault. Whether it's, find the 10 closest notes, write me a summary, create that note for me, or I want an index page for this folder, what headings could I do? And I'm sure there are a sort of a finite number of very common tasks that we could iterate prompts around.
Agreed.
Further expanding upon that, so I look at the prompt and everything that you guys showed. So one of the things that I think is we should be cognizant about is the context window of the AI, because you put the prompt, but the prompt you showed, it seemed like there was a lot of text in there. And so one of the things that Brian has been working on, or that I've seen him work on, is like what is it, FO notation? What is that?
Oh, I remember what you're talking about. Yeah. Off the
So
top of my head, I don't
essentially,
have it.
it's a way to heavily reduce whatever it is, the natural language text you have, into like F implies P and whatever like that. And so like we could even have something where if you have the super long prompt, we have a conversion where we'll be like, all right, we'll just transform all this natural language into like a shorter prompt to give you more context, because like it's only as good as like how much context you kind of give it. And if you give too much, then you have less in terms of how much it can output. And so I think that would be a big benefit when you have people who have all these big details and long text, transpile that into that notation, so you have a lot more room left for the output to give better results. Just a thought.
And I remembered what it was. It was F logic. So like I was messing around. There's this like existing syntax called F logic, and I was just kind of creating a derivative. Which is one of the great things about the LLMs is like you don't have to have a syntactically accurate representation in order to get the LLM to understand what's going on. And like I know like there's a lot of talk about like these million contexts or even like a billion context window. The issue is though with those really large context windows, and like why I believe Evan is right, and like like what he's saying is like you do want to limit the context, is because the future I see is LLMs, imagine it's just kind of like continuously processing in the background. And in order to do that, you're going to need local models. And as much as I'm very optimistic about local models, I don't know for sure that they are going to be able to handle million plus context windows, like especially for the average user. And on top of that, you'll be limited to, like, let's say you are able to do a million context window, what ends up becoming more valuable? Like, so if it takes 10 seconds to run that, to run that prompt with a million tokens, what's more valuable? Having that one output, or having 10 or maybe 100 outputs of a smaller context window on a smaller model, with the goal of going to the same outcome? I think we got a little, off the desired workflows. So like maybe if anybody else, does anybody else have any desired workflows that they, they can imagine working, but like, the tools just aren't there yet?
I mean, in general, being able to control, like create our own multi-agent frameworks or whatever, like that flexibility would be amazing. But I think that taps also into
what kind of frameworks?
Like pretty much being able to control when we do the smart chat, right? Rather than just having your like vanilla OpenAI answering, I would like to have my own autogen flow, right? So create without the need of creating our own API endpoint or stuff like that. Just easier, like make it easier for us to, hook it up to our own GPT, for example. Let's use this example. I think that's kind of something that everyone can relate to. Just I want to be answered by my own GPT.
Yeah. Definitely on the short-term roadmap. So I am midway through a rewrite of the smart chat. And my intention is to make it much easier to at least utilize the popular local model platforms like Ollama. Like right now you need to do some custom configuration, but I don't see why there shouldn't be, some presets in there. And then of course, clarifying how you would go about that. When you're saying no API, are you talking about like maybe, having a way to integrate with an LLM that's like running through the command line?
Among others, yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
I mean, I
Exactly.
definitely don't see why that wouldn't be possible, because you can basically wrap a command line with JavaScript and execute commands. So, it's just an integration layer there.
Okay.
And anybody else?
One second, Brian, before we move away. Let's say that I wanna have my own custom GPT, my own assistance API to manage my smart chat, right? How do I do that?
So like currently there is a custom local model section that should be listed with OpenAI, Anthropic, and the Google models. And then there are some configuration options, based on a lot of people's like issues on the GitHub. Like I'm not sure whether or not something has broken, and whether or not that integration is working well. But I've kind of decided, instead of trying to dig into that legacy code, any like time and energy I have, I'm going to be putting into just getting that new version out, which would make that whole like it's achieving the same thing, but it would also make figuring out what the issues are much easier, because the current chat just doesn't follow the same patterns is what I'm working with now, and that makes things difficult to get into. So there should be a way, like if you're in the smart chat in the top right corner, the gear icon, there is a custom local model option in there that may or may not work currently, but that's how you would go about configuring a local model, and it would be through a local host API.
Okay.
So I know one of the workflow, and I've talked about this multiple times. I don't have to keep repeating it every single time you have a smart connections lean coffee, but like the primary workflow that I am using with Obsidian, and quite frankly, Zia on the call is also helping me with this, is pretty much everything in gold here. If I can take the level of effort of things that I encounter in the world, be it a blog post or an email that I get or a link that I find, I'm scrolling, if I see something interesting on LinkedIn, what's the lowest effort way to capture that information and also the source reference to that information so I can have it properly credited, down the road. And then begin to get all of that in Obsidian, so that I can at least, I wouldn't say future proof, but without even worrying about what I'm going to do with it, start to have lowest barrier, highest effectiveness ways to start harvesting knowledge and information that I encounter in the world that's relevant to me, so that I can then use that in the next wave of AI agents, or as the cost and solutions tied to sort of like RAG and all of that stuff comes down, I have essentially a personal vault of information that's within not some other company's walled garden, but my own garden, that I could potentially leverage myself. The very first lean coffee that we had, I keep going back to this picture, but like the very first lean coffee that we had, we talked about this idea of digital selves, and the idea, if you look at, if you break down your digital self, actually breaking that down, in theory, you could have a digital self that has different agents that do certain things, automatically with your digital self. And now we start to explore the idea of digital selves talking to others' digital selves. But in order for that to happen, harvesting what I encounter in the world into some sort of medium that can be, smaller than the internet of things that are going to be relevant for all of these technologies to actually leverage, to actually understand what I'm what I'm encountering in the world. So like from a workflow perspective, that's really something that me and Zia are right now experimenting with. Like, how do I make it as easy as possible that in a moment, if I encounter something, it's just like a boom, add that to the thing. And when I have time, I'll go later. I think, Jason, you were mentioning that idea, or somebody on this call was mentioning the idea of like, maybe it was when we were talking about Evan and the visualizer stuff, this idea of, select this note, this note, this note, bump them all against each other and see what insight might come out of it. Imagine if everything you've encountered over the last 2, 3, 5 years was archived in a data set that you control, and you could do that. And if that continued to progress for the rest of your lifetime, you are essentially just building a library of everything that you've ever encountered, which is more valuable than even if you had 1 degree to that. Like, I don't know, just that's a thing that I think about all the time with workflows and smart connections. So
Yeah,
and I don't even know what the green stuff comes of that in the future, but I think where my head is at right now is like, I'm trying to future proof the fact that all of that is rapidly changing. So what's the workflows to make the gold stuff just start now as opposed to starting 2 years from now?
So I want to just say, number one, the visuals you do are just so incredibly valuable to this meeting. So just like, thank you for doing that. But the second thing is, I put this little note down here right to the left, like bottom left of synthesized. Like, what do you think about like an inbox as like, a way, like, just to be clear, like everything you're saying, like that is the vision, like that is what I see as the future. So like, that's what I'm working towards. But like now, like what does that actually look like from an interface perspective? Something I've thought a lot about is like an inbox, and of course, because this is how I name everything, I call it the smart inbox. But like, am I right or wrong to think that, like after these first 3 steps, like intake, collection, synthesize, that can all happen in the background is like, is how I imagine it. And then you'd be presented with an inbox. Does that sound like I'm on the same page as like what you're going toward? Like
so I have that already using data view around properties on front matter of notes. So like Matthew, I'll go and read stuff. It comes in through Readwise or research papers through Zotero, or, there's only a couple of ways that it comes in. And ultimately through a couple of integrations, then I have a sources folder that has articles, books, or I use Snipped for podcasts as well. And so ultimately I have a group. Now, whenever it automatically creates a note there, the front matter has a status tag, which is inbox. And then I have a data view page, which basically then lists everything in there. And then I can go in, think, oh, that's interesting, and might create some notes around that. And then when I use Smart Connect, the embeddings on the side, because as I'm making the notes, I'm like, I really want to connect the knowledge to everything else, or to the most useful areas. That's how it starts to get value, where you're like, oh, I don't know, this idea is really similar to this idea, and actually like that. So I'm going to create a new summary note that connects to all of them. So almost and then I'll bring in text generator and say, these 3 ideas are very similar. And I'll have text generator, you create AI output that's within a call out, like an admonition, call out. So I always know which is the AI generated content and which is mine. But then I'll have a dialogue as to how that goes, pulling in notes or adding wiki links to things from the Smart Connect to the side. So I think the inbox is there. I think you can do it, separately, but the processing and then how I find your tools amazingly useful and super interesting around being able to auto-generate some of those notes. But I think one of the things I listed was, I'm wondering whether I'm going to need to make my custom GPT to put my front matter and some categorization stuff on the notes that Smart Connect generates. or that I generate, because otherwise I generate notes and then I have to go in and manually add these things. So I'm sorry, there was a lot of stuff there. I guess I was just
Yeah, no, it sounds like you've already developed your own sort of inbox user experience. So like I think like like I'm a big fan of DataView, like I use that, it's pretty much whenever I open up Obsidian, I'm looking at a DataView because that is, kind of how I'm hacking together an inbox at this point. Like my idea is like, a lot of those like different steps that you were mentioning that lead up to you reviewing the DataView, it's like how much of that can just be, thrown together into a background process. And like the UI, like what it looks like is not as much of like what I'm concerned about as much as, like what is included, like what information, you mentioned you use the call outs to show the generated stuff, so like when you're importing things from outside of Obsidian, like is there, a process that the AI, goes through to say, hey, like based on all your other notes, this thing might be more important, and that's kind of where I was getting at, for the inbox UI, to kind of do some pre-processing, and then display it to you in a way where it's like, based on our past interactions, I think that this should be the first thing you look at, and then like that would be another important part, like that right now, like at least, like how I'm using it, there's no way to really give feedback to the DataView to say like, hey, this thing shouldn't be prioritized number one. So then I'm in there, trying to write these sorting algorithms and like adding more front matter to like, make the right things pop up first. But like, imagine if that was all just like happening in the background because you said, nah, this thing should not be the first priority, and then somehow that, propagates to the future.
Yeah, I mean, I love the idea of the pre-processing of, as my, eventually my Readwise notes are all in there, and it's already generated not only a summary of those with some of the key points, but actually connected to other notes that are in there. And then the prioritization, I guess, comes to me, or I internally prioritize based on the kinds of outputs right at the bottom that I want. So if I know that I'm writing an article on something or a book chapter on something, or I want to get something out of it, then the AI needs to know what it is that I'm trying to achieve, to know what priorities each of these things happen. Otherwise, how do you prioritize? But I love it's almost a research assistant in the background, taking your ideas, your notes, summarizing, connecting, coming up with new ideas. I put the Infranodus question I put down. I played with the tool recently, and it does text graph analysis of just single notes. But the interesting thing I think that Matthew was talking about was this idea smushing with this idea. It actually looks at an article and says, well, I can cluster words together in a variety of ways that are particular ideas. And then it starts to say, well, how do you bridge that gap? So I've got, a big idea. This article has 4 ideas, but these 2 are connected quite closely. These 2 not at all. So what is it about the principles that are deep within the text that's quite interesting? It's a very different approach from sort of the smart graph and the smart connect stuff. But there's something about how it thinks about concepts by clustering a variety of ideas together and then calling that a concept and then seeing how it connects.
Yeah, I'm going to have to review the Infranodus. I've seen it in the past, but I never really dove in to like how it's working.
It's a very strange. It's a very strange tool.
Yeah, I'm going to have to look at it just for sake of time, because I know we have a couple more to vote notes here. I put down review Infranodus as something that I'm going to do, by the next meeting. But unless anybody has any closing thoughts on the desired workflows, I say we move on.
Well, one closing thought is like I just see what you're talking about with the AI assisted inbox processing and everything. I feel like that's all just going to be part of the template. Like whatever template you create will, like the template you add in there, like the AI assisted inbox and process is how that's going to start. So
Yeah,
just just a thought on that. I just see that being defined in the template. But
Yeah, that's one of
Cool.
my thoughts behind the templates is that I do see it being like a way that we can create these workflows. You know, like I actually
like
see
function calling.
Yeah, and like I see a workflow actually being like a derivative of a template, you know, like so like a workflow is really just like a sequence of templates.
Right.
But thanks guys, that was a great discussion here.
I want to
You
do
know,
one more thing, and then
I
we
think
can shift over because so I know this is a good discussion. I know we have other topics, and Fran, it sounds like you got something else too.
no. I just
I-
love like how he said it, right? Like a workflow can be a succession of templates. I think that holds some. Yeah, I like that future.
Cool. I think I've shown this before, but just as you're thinking about templates and going forward, I don't know if you guys, I think most people here are familiar with like Ethan Mollick and not like his work. But one of the things that I really like is part of his like student exercise prompts end up themselves becoming like workflows. So like, for example, the tutoring prompt, if you are working with a tutor on a topic, it's not just supposed to be giving you the answers. What this does is actually sets up a structure of how you're essentially turning the conversation with ChatGPT or Claude or whatever into a like it's knows instructions to then guide when it works back with you working through a topic. And so as you're thinking about these templates, you could follow some of these patterns where imagine you had a prompt, you know, for AI assisted inboxing, inbox processing, and you said, hey, I'm ready to process my inbox. And then it actually had a prompt that was, you know, setting the context, understanding how much time do you know, imagine if it was the AI assisted prompt, you could tell it, first thing you need to ask me is how much time do I have? Do I have 5 minutes? Do I have an hour? You know, next thing is, do you want to introduce new priorities that have come up, or do you want me to use the priorities I already know that you're working on because you're writing a book and you got a client project going on and da da da. And you could essentially have you could flip the paradigm a little bit and essentially have the GPT function as a thing that's actually interviewing and working with you through a process. So
can you drop that link in the action items for me, because I definitely want to give that one a further review.
yeah. Well, yeah, this is I get it sort of
Oh, okay, it's already down there somewhere.
yeah, I added it right there. I tossed it
Perfect.
right.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's a cool thing that I've used before. And in fact, the other day, Zia's on the call. I'm gonna shout out to you a little bit. Zia was moved to this another topic, but Zia's getting some stuff in university right now, and you know, there's some chemistry lesson or whatever. And what we essentially did is we used that prompt, uploaded a chemistry lab, and that prompt essentially turned into a tutor that could work through that lab's context and ask Zia questions to test for his understanding of the topic. So
Nice.
I think, I mean, Zia, were you connecting that dot as you were listening to this conversation when we were talking about templates?
Yeah, it was very useful.
Cool.
Thanks to you. Yeah, that saved my grade on that one.
Nice. All right. Other two topics here for the last 10 minutes. Smart connections inside Quartz. I have no idea what that means, so let's explore that.
So I know what that means, but I'm sure that was Fran. So did you have anything you wanted to elaborate on that? Because I do have that in the plans.
Okay, great. That is really great to hear. I think that it was like, I was really surprised, you know, when you started. I didn't know, by the way, that there was a docs for smart connections literally on Quartz.
It's
but yeah,
new.
since it is new, yeah. Also, it's not really well indexed on Google at all.
What is
also,
Quartz?
Quartz is just a way to it's like how do you call it? Obsidian Publish. Just open source, and you can just create pretty much a nice way to share your notes with the world. It creates a website, let's say, a static website with your notes.
Yeah, and the important part about it for me is that it's customizable, unlike the Obsidian Publish, which I'd love to use because it's very convenient, but you know, like I just need to be able to do more. And one of those things is I want to be able to have like the smart connections interfaces inside the website. And, just so you know, like as far as progress on that is, Fran, like I definitely, there's some like, key components like, like are we generating embeddings, like and including them on pages. Like I've actually already started like working through a lot of the problems that, would be required to solve to get smart connections on courts. And I'm actually highly motivated to do that because I think having smart connections in the documentation for smart connections actually shows how the software is supposed to work. So then this way, somebody who may not like be very familiar can actually see like, oh, this is what it can do.
Yes, because at the moment, I must admit that as much as I love QWERTY and like the documentation, I think it is a great idea to have. What it crosses my mind when I enter for the first time to the docs of Smart Connection is like, oh, this looks like a complicated tool. Like you're abstracted from Smart Connections, right? Because you're just seeing so much documentation. This must be hard to use, which is not the case. Yeah.
The documentation. What's that?
No. What I wanted to tell you is like, if you're actually actively already working towards that, I can give you a link to my calendar and we can just collaborate. Like like maybe put 1 hour a week or 2 hours a week or something like that, and push to make that happen. I think it should be easy somehow because they share technology, right?
Yeah, so it should be relatively easy of an implementation. There's like a few other things that I have that I like see as like more critical right now, like just because it's like what the like it's just like right now there's a lot of broken things, so I just want to get everything working cleanly. But yeah, maybe like if I don't have it out by the beginning of the next year, like definitely reach out to me about that, and maybe talking to you will help me get my head around what exactly needs to be done to get it out quickly. But I do think it's going to be a relatively easy implementation because for those documentation pages, all of that is in my Obsidian, so that means all the embeddings are already there. So it's really just like adding this next step of like compiling the necessary embeddings so that the like cosine similarity basically can be run client side, or and or if it like whether or not that should be the case, I'm still deciding. And then
I think that all the components do make sense, right? Like to have the smart connections, like list of semantic similarity for sure, but as well as the chat, right? Like it would make so much sense to have these two components. And I guess that I wanted to very quick side note. I realized that at the beginning of the smart search, when you had this feature, you could just type, and then after some milliseconds, it would do the search, right? And now you have to click the search button. I miss the other thing. I really do.
I mean that's like 3 lines of JavaScript, maybe less. So I'm writing a note down right now. Just auto submit in lookup pane. Yeah, I'm calling it.
I get that it's gonna confuse some people, maybe. I don't know, but I think that it's intuitive, and at least there should be a shortcut to search, rather than clicking with the trackpad. That just kind of crossed my mind. It's like a pain point. So yeah,
definitely. Because I feel like this is just me and you, Fran, let's move to the next topic. But we can definitely follow up about that.
So how about this? We got 5 minutes left. Evan, Brian, I added this sticky note here because you guys were talking about this. Can you give us some maybe pump us up around what's around the corner with respect to, you said visualizations is the future.
Yeah, all right. I mean, I'll take that. I mean, it's around the corner. Debatable. I mean, I'm working on it, but now that I moved, I should have more time. But like that is the future of like not just like how we think about things, but even artificial intelligence. I'll send this chat thing to you guys. I'm not sure if you guys know who Fei Lee is, but she is like an entrepreneur who's worked heavily in the AI space, and she's pushing the frontier of visual spatial intelligence. And the reason is because like with AI, like they're all language models. Like you're trying to communicate to an AI a three-dimensional world using text and words. Like how much could it truly understand of what our world is, through that? But it's not just that, it's also with humans as well. Like with what Matt has going on here, would it be better if we had this all written in text documents for us to look through? Or is it way easier for us to comprehend and use logic with everything? It's like playing chess. Like let's play chess, not have the chessboard. People do that in their heads. Knight to d5, and you just have to remember everything, and then whatever. Like the amount of logic that you can use with your limited brain capacity is like physically impossible for complicated things. And even the language that we use, the words that we use, even if I mean to say them, aren't as accurate as the thoughts that I have in my head, like 9 times out of 10. That's like the main conflict of like the majority of the world, I feel, is miscommunication through words that they say, through how they write them, through all the text. But if you have a visual aspect, that is something that is able to make you understand and use logic with things at 10 times better rate, because you're offloading the memory that you need to retain in your head onto a visualization. Now it's like, all right, instead of thinking about all the chess pieces on the chessboards, you move that chess piece. Now have to think of every single chess piece that moves with that. I can just see it. I can just move it and see everything move automatically, dynamically update. So that's what I mean is the future of that is like you'll be able to see everything change versus like if you update some text, it'll update some notes that you have. But like, I mean, how much is that really going to help? And so that's where I think the visualization is going to completely change everything. And also on top of that, you could send the AI your map. Like if I have a map of all the different connections, I can send it that. So instead of it hallucinating, because even if you have embedding and what have you, there's still the chance of it hallucinating, coming up with stuff. With this, at least you've now created a visualization that is static, that the AI can't like mess up, And so you both have something that's grounded, and like every time you have something, send this visualization in. Now with whatever I want, keep adding to it. And so like, I mean, there's so much more I can say about this, but I think that's just like a sneak peek of like, it's just exponentially better than having everything in text, because we can understand and comprehend so much more. Even the AI can as well. So I really think the next jump, at least with AI, will be with what Fei Ling's working on, or Fei is working on in terms of visual spatial intelligence. Because like, I mean, honestly, like there's no way you can understand the 3D world just through text and audio. Like, and even the visual aspect of the images they give you, how that works is that they just process the image into text that gets sent into AI. It's not the AI sees it. So like it can't understand like this is this many pixels away from this and this is this distance. But if it could, the amount of information and knowledge it would know would be exponentially greater. So like this is just the future. I mean, like there's more.
It's funny you mention that.
Yeah,
it's funny you mention that because that is almost in terms of how I use AI in the workplace. I'm a business consultant and I do like transformation, change management, like helping clients go from strategy to execution. And a lot of the mediums that I work with are by definition already visuals, because I have to communicate most of the like success in my field has to be visual communication of complex things in simple forms to humans. Well, if I need to rapidly get an AI to assist me in some of that activity, the quickest way for me to do it, with the right parameters from a security perspective, is screenshots of those visuals that I can then put into Notebook LLM or a Claude project or ChatGPT, and then say using this context. And it is fascinating how much more and more effective the LLM models are at just like using that to seed things. So I think what I'm hearing you describe, and this is a good sort of way to maybe close this out here, is that doesn't have to continue. This is a scientific word. That doesn't have to continue to be kludgy. Like it doesn't have to continue to be awkward. Actually using visuals as a first order medium to build out that shared understanding with AI, and then having AI be able to produce things that aren't absolutely horrendous visuals, as part of the conversation, because those never work. At least so far, they don't work very well. Would be pretty cool.
Right, because like I mean, it's seriously like pictures 1,000 words. So it's instead of typing out your freaking long essay prompt, you just send a picture and it has everything. So
Yeah.
like, and especially now with the ChatGPT app, like they're going to be having video where even like, you know, you have your app, but then eventually when it gets the glasses, your prompt is going to be the video of whatever you're seeing.
Yeah.
So it has the context of everything. So the questions you ask it, because the prompt is so rich with data, there's so much data in that prompt, the answer it can give you is going to be 10 times better than if you were to describe it like in a text or in a document. And
Yeah.
so like, that's where I'm saying, like, especially even with the graph that we can generate with Smart Connections Visualizer, granted, it's the very beginning, it's not where we want it to get, but eventually that should be able to
Cool.
Yeah, I mean,
heavily
even
impact.
even writing a white paper or writing a document or something, I tend to use Canvas to lay out the
Mhm.
ideas that are all connected, and then you
Right.
move the pieces
Mm.
until you can
Oh.
describe it in
And
a.
now connecting what you're saying, what all you guys are saying, you're saying being able to use Canvas or a graph to describe a concept
Right.
as the
Correct.
output of the interaction is going to be far more effective at getting across the outcome that you're looking than having a text prompt. Like
Right.
that's what you guys are
Right.
talking about as like a future thing, being able to communicate with the currency of visualizations as opposed to text. Okay, cool.
Exactly. So like, to give you guys a little
Yeah,
background, like
gotcha.
I mean, I work with
I
work with
gotta wrap
Steve,
up the call, by the way.
Oh yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
No,
Wrap it up.
sorry.
Yeah, this
Oh,
is great.
okay. So like real quick, I work on visualizations like a lot, like for my job and everything. And it's like the ability, not just because like, all right, I want to filter through this or I want to filter through that. So you can cluster and group things through all these different ways, find all these just different connections very easily by being able to manipulate the visualization whatever way you want. And you can even do that with a prompt. Like, give me all the times that I like all the times that I like will progress further in my future, like, or my career, what are all the notes that I have about that and stuff like that. And then it'll be able to aggregate and visualize and see, oh, but this node is connected to that. You know,
Yeah.
it's
Well,
all there. But I'm
Just
very excited for
for
it.
sake of time, I appreciate the insights, Evan. Definitely, I want to see you at the next one so we can dive deeper.
Yes.
Thank you for everybody for participating. Thank you, Matthew, for the wonderful job you do and contributing your time to make this happen. You know, these calls are incredibly valuable to me. I love them. So
Cool.
thank you, everybody.
My pleasure. Thanks, everybody. See you next time.
Thank you.
Take care, guys.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Brian.